Welcome everyone to another episode of Leadership Footprints. I have a special guest today who I respect a whole lot. I met this woman 5 years ago at UTLA at the United Teachers Los Angeles. And I've been in the union movement for 26 years. I have seen many leaders, different levels in many different unions. And one thing that I respect about this guest today that I have the privilege to interview is her integrity, her commitment to building the labor movement, no matter how high her position is. I have noticed that sometimes leaders, as they get high up on the ladder of leadership within some of the unions, they stop being hard workers. That's the truth. They just become people who deliver speeches and nothing happens after that. This woman is nothing like that. She is in the trenches every day. I consider myself a hard worker, but when I see her, I always say to myself, I gotta step on my game because she really brings it. So it is my privilege to have her here today. Her name is Arlene Inouye. Welcome, my sister Arlene. How are you today?
Oh, Pablo, thank you so much for that. I am doing really well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate you, even during your vacation, giving me this time to interview you. So let me get into some of the questions that I would like our audience to listen so that we can extract the leadership nuggets that they can learn from. Number one, how does Arlene Inouye acquire this leadership seed in her mind? What happened in your background, in your upbringing, that led you to have this desire to become a leader? What can you share with us about that?
Well, Pablo, for me, it wasn't so much that I said I want to be a leader. It's like an evolution of my life, I would say, and what I kept learning and growing. And I went through, I mean, if you knew me 20, 30 years, well, I would say 25 years ago, I was a very different person. And I think I went through seeing the failure of some of the things I had believed in. I believed in, like the American dream, like getting married and some of the Asian cultural values that were ingrained in me. Status, education, money, some of those things. Not that I ever wanted to have a lot of money or anything, but those things were values. But I learned that through some failures, I was actually involved in a Christian, like a community that was supposed to be developing God's family. And it failed because the leader was more about power and control. And I think it turned my world upside down because everything that I thought was important was not. And so what I kind of came away with is that I needed to be true to myself. That was something that I realized I learned. It's not about anything else. It's not about status, education, position, but I needed to be who I was. And I wasn't because I felt like I was less. And I was, as a Japanese American whose parents were incarcerated and whose family was pretty much destroyed by racism in many ways, I had kind of tried to be that mono minority, to do, work hard and be the perfect little girl, seeing that none of that works. And it's death to me to try to live in a way that's not authentically who I am. So I made a conscious choice to heal from my past, to heal from all that I thought I was supposed to be, and to really let myself live. So to me, it's just been an adventure. I never planned out my steps, like I want to do this, or I'm going to be a union officer. I didn't even know anything about the union. quite
That's
frankly.
hard to believe.
I didn't know anything. So what happened first, though, I think that brought me into UTLA was um, just opening my heart up. Like when I was working as a speech therapist at Roosevelt High School in East Los Angeles, where I was one of my many schools, I saw military recruiters talking to young boys and lying to them. And I had never seen that before. And I was very shocked that it seemed like nobody cared. Nobody thought it was strange. But I knew because because I had gotten involved in some peace and justice um, organizations, that there was some what we call counter recruitment work. So I just decided when I was at this war rally in 2001 with the bombing of Iraq, that if I didn't do something, um, it would probably not happen. So I just decided to form an organization. I decided to call on allies and bring people together. And I came to UTLA and asked if they would join in Coalition Against Militarism in Our Schools, which was CAMS, which I founded in 2002, I guess, around then. And so from there, it became one of the national models. I work with several other organizations across the US, and we develop literature, we develop programs for schools, we have veterans come and speak to students. And it was about giving another perspective. It wasn't about telling kids, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't go to war. But it was about, did you know that this is what, when you enlist, this is what you're giving yourself to. And I think it was really humbling for me to realize that I had saved hundreds of lives of students. And some of them came back to tell me, how they were able to get out of the military because of some of the things we taught them. So to me, it was really about opening my heart to see humanity, to see kids. And I mean, I'm still emotional now thinking about that's what spurred my activism. It wasn't anything about me personally, my own dreams. It was the situation presented itself. We all have opportunities, and we could seize them, or we can give it for somebody else, or to just let it go, let it pass. So from there, I became involved in UTLA, and then I was encouraged by some sisters to run for office who felt like I would be a good leader there. And I didn't see it in myself, but it's because of others who encouraged me. I think the importance of having mentors and having people who see something in us that we don't see in ourselves is so critical. And so they said, yeah, you should do it. And I said, well, what do I know about the union? And they said, oh, you'll probably learn. And they were right.
They were right about that.
Yeah, you just put yourself in there, and you learn so much. So it's been fun. It's been an adventure. Yeah, I just feel very, very fortunate.
Oh my God. It's amazing how I'm just an audience here listening to you, because I know some of your story. Obviously, I work with you closely, and I still hear different parts that I didn't know, how you actually came into UTLA. And for all of you listening, in case you didn't catch these nuggets, let me try to extract them for you, because to Arlene Inouye, this is just her typical way of speaking, but there are so many secrets that she shared with you. Number one, having that sense of responsibility, right? So many times we walk around and we feel like, I would like the world to have this, or the world to be this way. Well, that is your calling to leadership. And oftentimes what happens, we hear that calling and we just shake it away and we move on with our lives. And what Arlene did, she answered the call. And because she did, she opened a door that started her journey into that leadership position that she has today. Also, the other part I want to share is that her servant attitude, it wasn't about her at all. It was always about helping somebody else. And that's one of the qualities that I think makes Miss Inouye so important and so different than other people that I met in leadership positions. She really does care for everybody else. She's a hard worker, a hard worker. When I say that, it's an understatement. And I think the commitment comes from that, wanting to serve others, right? Wanting to change the world to make it a better place. And that brings me to the next question, Arlene. So in your leadership experience, which you kind of answer it, but I want to ask it more pointed this time. Is leadership something that people are predestined to have? They're born with a leadership gene? Or is it something that you develop because you decide to become more relevant in the world around you? What do you think?
Yeah, I believe, Pablo, that that we all have it in us. And sometimes it's hidden because of our own self-doubt or some of the cultural expectations. For example, as a female, we may not see ourselves as leaders. And for me, I didn't for many years. My goal was to get married for whatever reason that I had that. That was something that I had in my heart. But to be able to realize that, yeah, I am a whole person and I need to be true to myself. And so I think if we all could listen and I think meditation and reflection is really important. I try to do that a lot because I think if we could listen to ourselves and not all the things that especially now, like social media, all of the buzz that we hear around us, I think we really need to listen to ourselves, because I think we are all capable of being leaders and stepping forward in phenomenal ways. So yes, I think it's a part of who we are. I think we're made this way, and some of us have opportunities that are very, very special. And I know some people are in very oppressed situations that make it a lot more difficult.
Right. I agree with you 100%. I believe we are made to lead, but we're conditioned to believe that we shouldn't. And
That's
so many
right.
of us
That's
get
a good
lost,
way to
right?
say it.
And it's so
Yeah.
true. And so you share right now 2 secrets of what you do that I think helps you, which is my next question. What do you do to stay focused? Because look, I being a leader in the union movement for 26 years, and I do have my routine for success that I call that helps me to stay pointed on the mission. What do you do to help your mindset? Because I know that as humans, sometimes we wake up and sometimes we just don't want to go and do it. But you are one of those people that no matter what, you answer the call of duty, no matter what. What are 2 things that you do that help you stay on task, stay focused on your leadership development and your leadership delivery for those people that are relying on you so much?
Well, one thing I think is that I am organized and I have a clear I have a clear idea of what I want to do or what I need to do, what's before me. So I think that's helpful. I think, in this job, you really do have to be organized with your time, with the work, with your priorities. And like I mentioned before, being able to reflect and just be aware of myself and what I'm feeling and where I'm coming from. But I would like to share the example of the strike and what was going on, as you brought that earlier, Pablo, is that was a very, very, very high point and stressful time, one would say, where there was a lot riding on the results of our negotiations. It was an amazing experience. We were actually at City Hall to negotiate, which was a different experience. We we were with the mayor. He brought us in, LAUSD as well as UTLA. And there was an excitement, about it, like this is something really big. But we had no idea that there would be so much public support. We had no idea there would be 50, 60, 70,000 members and parents and community and organizations and on the streets. We had no idea that the youth would be holding their own demonstrations. There would be a strike school for some of the parents and community. So I didn't know a lot of that myself because that wasn't what I was focused on. I was focused on negotiations. And I remember thinking as I was preparing to go into the city hall and begin this adventure, is that I needed to bring this team together. It was critical that our team felt the importance of being a part of a team, the seriousness of what we were going to do, and I wanted them to work hard. So I remember starting out the time saying, "Hey, I want to reflect on where we're at right now and what we're feeling, and what we've gone through together and what we're going to do." And it was very moving. I mean, very powerful. And I think there was that bond that was critical to take us through the stress of the long hours, and the pressure of trying to get something done. And I know I felt that. In fact, I'm going to admit that I would have probably agreed to things that the whole team didn't agree to, and we had some people who were just, no way, we need more. So I think it was very edifying for me to be able to be a part of this team, because we worked together. We made a commitment that every single thing that came to the table, and there were a lot of different items that we talked about, we had to all have a voice. We had to say yay or nay to everything. And sometimes I felt like I needed to get, people would say, okay, they wanted to get some food, and we had food brought in, but they wanted to get their own coffee or whatever. And my original feeling is, no, you stay here. We got to do this work, because that's how I am, right?
No food, no coffee. What do you think this is?
But it's still okay. Got to give people, got to loosen up and let people do what they need to do. So I had to learn that. But then, I would call them back. Hey, we're doing this now. Come on back. We got to get this work done. I really felt that the lives of the members, the students, the families was really, really on our shoulders. It was a big responsibility. And so we bargained hard. We asked for a lot. We took, we didn't give in, and it actually ended up paying off, because the superintendent, Austin Butner, really wanted that strike to end. And after it had gone on, went on for 9 days, it was getting very costly for the district, and they lost public support. So we were able, at the last hours, we were able to slip in common good demands for the community that we would have never gotten ever. So we were able to get a lot, but at the same time, part of the failures of that time was we weren't clear-headed, and we didn't process things really well. So when we tried to explain it to the members the next morning after not having any sleep, they didn't, they kind of attacked it, and we were just totally shocked, because we thought it was a really good deal. But of course we didn't digest the complications of it in different ways, things that people brought up. So it wasn't like, you have this victory and everything is wonderful and everything is all, everybody's grateful. No, it wasn't that way. And when we look back, we said, yeah, we should have kind of, we were, kind of made sure we understood everything well. But when I think about it, we were all tired. We were just trying to get through what we needed to get through. And I don't know if we could have really done that much better. But because, you're dealing with humans, right? with our own, what do you call it? Attention spans and our own tiredness.
Yeah.
But I think I remember listening to the crowds down below cheering us on, and that was just an amazing feeling. And we did feel like, yes, we were doing this for everyone, and it was I think everyone felt it was a real honor and privilege to be able to do the best we could, and to do the best we could together.
Oh, it's just so nice to hear the recap, right, of how it occurred, at least from your perspective. And for those of you who may not know what we were talking about, Ms. Inouye is referring to the 2019 strike that the teachers in Los Angeles had, the historical strike with the biggest numbers that have ever been seen on a strike for Los Angeles. 2019. So, and she was the bargaining chief negotiator. Imagine having that kind of pressure on your shoulders, right? So, as she was sharing, there are things that a leader does and learns as we go through. And I think the key nugget that I want people to extract from everything that Arlene has shared so far is that failure is part of the leadership process. The problem is that many of us look at failure as something that you need to avoid at all costs. And when you fail, you internalize it and then you quit. A leader learns to experience failure, but not make it the platform upon which they base their value. A leader looks at failure, they experience it, they learn from it, and they get up and try it again. And I think that that's a nugget that Arlene has been sharing with us. And I just wanted to make sure that I flagged it. So now, Arlene, are you going to be the chief negotiator, the bargaining chief negotiator for this next year? Because I know that contract negotiations are coming up again, right?
Yes. Let me just explain how that happened as well, because I have had, prior to 2017, there was another woman who was the chief negotiator, and she retired. And so I was asked, and I was actually strongly encouraged, like, Arlene, you're the only one who could do it.
You were voluntold.
But I had never had any negotiating experience at all. Of course, in my other lives and other things I've done like conflict mediation. I've done, I was like a consultant for human relations and things like that. And again, those are things that I gravitated toward. But I had never done any negotiations. So I had a lot to learn just about how that process is. But I was also very closely had as a partner our executive director, who's negotiated many contracts and who has the knowledge. So I could rely on him. It's, again, it's not all up to us, right? We have to find the people around us who can support, and how we make a team together. So yeah, so I just jumped in there again, just like jumping in to be a UTLA officer. I didn't know anything about negotiations, but hey, I was willing, and I think what I did bring to the team that I think hadn't been experienced before is really connecting the members to each other, and feeling a sense of purpose, a sense of everyone feeling important and valued. I think that is really, really critical in everything that I do, and so it wasn't after the strike. I mean, we negotiated during the pandemic for 18 months. And that was very, very difficult. It was on Zoom, and it was constant. We must have negotiated around 20 side letters. And we brought nurses in when we were dealing with, the nurses having different job now with doing the COVID testing, and then when vaccinations came in, what is that going to look like? Teachers doing distance learning. It was pretty intense with our own bargaining team, who are majority classroom teachers. They're working, learning distance learning themselves, and then negotiating, in the afternoons and into the evening. So I think it's been very, very challenging. Everybody's kind of pushed themselves. We had no break. I think we had finally last year during Christmas holiday, we had a break from negotiations, but we pretty much went through the year. And so now we're looking at a different kind of situation where, we're back in school, but I'm really proud that UTLA has a deeper contract negotiation process for a 3-year contract that expires June 2022, this coming year, where we have actually engaged 530 school sites. We've engaged 22 itinerant groups to really give us input into what are the priorities, what is the most important thing to improve teaching and learning for your students and for families. So we've engaged in that process. So this is going to be very, very challenging to now get proposals from more groups than have ever. I mean, people are very interested in it now, or they're aware, they have their ideas, to really hear from everyone and make them into contract proposals, to bring members to the table. We haven't exactly decided what we're going to do yet, if we're going to have multiple teams, how we're going to look at bargaining. It'll probably look different than the past. We're going to look at some of the models out there from other unions and how they've done it. But we're just being open to what kind of process is going to be the most beneficial. So I actually am termed out in 2023. So I am, this will be my last go round with the contract negotiations. And then, we have term limits, and I will have met my term limits of 12 years as an officer, which is a pretty long time. A lot of officers don't stay that long, but I've been with 3 different presidents so far. And I feel like the union is moving and evolving in a way that, in the vision that I've had for it, with specifically with more member engagement, more member leadership development. Of course, there's a lot more to do, but it's headed in the right direction. More parent community involvement and authentic partnerships. Not before, in the past, the union did not have good partnerships with parents. I think we came a little bit arrogantly, wanting, we weren't in equal partnerships. So I think those are all powerful, powerful changes that I feel is the future of the labor movement, and also lifting up women of color in particular, women are 73% of our union, but we also have a majority of color in UTLA, which is unique. But we have over 50% of men and women of color. So we're lifting those voices up who have not been in leadership in the past, and encouraging whether at the school site or in the top leadership for women and men to step up and be leaders in our union. So it's a very exciting time, and I'm really honored to be a part of this. And in particular, for me, as a speech and language therapist, I've really wanted to lift up the itinerant voices and those members who often feel that the union doesn't represent them, and to really make sure that we go out of our way to hear their concerns and issues. And yeah, this is the union represents all. I know our name is United Teachers Los Angeles, which came from our founding, but we definitely represent every educator. And I think we're doing a better job of that more and more. And I'm proud to be a part of that.
That's great. So over your 12 years, Arlene, what have been your 3 titles that you have held over those 12 years as an officer?
Oh, I've only had 2 titles, treasurer and then secretary, because I was 2 terms, 6 years as treasurer, and then I will have been 2 terms as secretary. And I'm really proud that as treasurer, I was able to get the union on board to face our structural deficit and actually have a campaign for a dues increase. And I know that if we didn't do that, we would not have been prepared for a strike. We wouldn't have had the structure nor the resources to be prepared to strike. And everything that we've done and that I've done builds for the next step to make us stronger and better. And one of the things I'm doing that I'm very proud of as secretary right now is revising our Constitution. And there's there've been a lot of problems with it because it's just been amended with add-ons and things didn't make sense. We've been sued for some of the things that were in the Constitution that we don't actually do or don't actually carry out. So cleaning it up and making sure that it reflects our practice and that it's current to the law. This has never been done in the history of the union. It's a hard job. So I have to go through it with the team, a Constitution Committee, and then taking it through the board and further hashing it out and then bringing it to the House of Representatives. So it takes a lot of collaboration, which I think is critical to be able to, what I think as a union is about, and I think is critical to when we try to make changes. You don't do it from the top down. You have to make sure the voices of our members are included. And it just takes a lot of time. It takes more time than if you just decided, okay, we're going to do this now. But it's lasting, and I know it's going to take us through for the next decades.
Wow. Well, it's amazing to hear because based on just what you shared today, obviously, everything that you do, you put your everything into it, right? When you were a treasurer, you did that dues increase, which is one of the toughest things a union does, but it's necessary because it's an investment so that you can be ready for the next battles. Then as a secretary, you were the chief bargaining negotiator, right? On the historical strike that we had in 2019. And so now you're moving on. And I just want to remind everybody that a lot of us have this skewed definition of what leadership is, right? A lot of times I hear people talk about leadership as if it's something for the entrepreneur, for the politician, right? For somebody out there on stage. But at its core, and I keep saying this, leadership is the decision by an individual to become relevant in the world around them. And Arlene embodies that. She is that catalyst that creates change around her on anything that she does. But that requires commitment, it requires focus, it requires real commitment to see things through. And the last question that I have for you, which is a fun question. If you had to pick up 3 people in history, whether they're dead or alive, to have dinner with, that you would like to speak with, who would those be, Arlene? 3 people, who would that be?
Without question, I would want to bring my grandparents before me, because when I grew up, they didn't speak English and I didn't speak Japanese, and I feel like I really miss out on the richness of my heritage and my family history, which I'm trying to write now, piecing things together. But there's so many holes. There's so many things I would like to know about what it was like for them growing up. I know that, they immigrated from Japan, and I know that my grandfather, for example, he was the last child of maybe 10 or 12, and they actually were going to drown him because they didn't have enough food. So he's left me pictures of his life because he's an artist. He became an artist after he retired, to just see the sequence of things in his life. But when he came here, you know, he did very well in managing a large department store in Little Tokyo, the only Japanese department store. And my grandmother was the first social worker in the city of Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, there's a interview that I have of her, how she talks about the family at the time, and that poverty was very rampant, and also intergenerational conflict between the first and the second generation Japanese. I'm third, so my parents' generation who grew up bilingual. But I would love to hear from them, you know, how they experienced life in the time of, there was a tremendous anti-Asian hatred during that time. You know, my other grandpa couldn't own farmland. He was a farmer because of the alien land laws. And so I'm learning more about that history now and the impact on our family. And I would love, you know, to know more from my ancestors. And I would love to talk to and meet up with Malcolm X, for example, as I'm reading more about his life and his journey. I think I didn't understand so much, you know, it kind of, you know, like, I guess both he and Muhammad Ali, they kind of seemed a little bit arrogant, you know, at the time to me. And gee, how could somebody say that, you know, about themselves or about white people, you know, as being the devil and so forth, but kind of really understanding what the history has been, what the pain and so I would really, you know, love to. I'm learning now. I'm continuously growing and reading and reflecting and changing my thoughts. So things that I thought were pretty extreme before, I don't think are extreme now, and I can understand more where they're coming from. But I would still love to hear from the, you know, leaders like them that are really remarkable. And also Grace Lee Boggs is one of my favorites.
Grace Lee Boggs?
Yes, the revolutionary Chinese woman married to an African man from the Union. And I was able to visit her home after she had died. They still haven't opened. But some of the things that she says are very penetrating to me as an Asian woman, kind of identifying with her. And yet she saw the need for revolution. And I do want to close too by saying that I've been realizing, as I've been closing out this year to 2021, that I felt a little bit down. And I think part of the feeling is, you know, when I think about our world and where it's heading, you know, whether it's our climate disaster, climate change, whether it's the threats to our so-called democracy, which is fragile as it is, but the insurrection, voter suppression, the attack, you know, on women's rights and LGBT folks. I mean, when you think about all these things that are facing us, you know, it just makes me very, very sad because, yeah, it's painful to know. But on the other hand, I say to myself that that's why we have to take action. That's why it's so critical that we don't just get depressed or, you know, feel bad about what's happening, but we can all do something. And then I remind myself that I've been put, you know, as in this time in history, I've been put into the union, which is making changes, which is a collective power that's bringing people together for the people's voice. And that's the contribution that I can make. I don't see it changing the whole world, But I think all of us together, that's how we all do that, is we take up the calling, whatever it is, whatever our calling is, we take it up and do our part, whatever, however big or however small, that we do our part for the sake of making a better world for everyone. And so that's that's my hope for 2022, that we all do our part so we can move forward.
Well, Arlene, I know that you would definitely be there doing your part. And it is the leadership of women like you that helps men like myself to keep moving forward, to keep fighting. Because I always say that if in the world, companies, governments, and these big institutions would take a motherhood as the blueprint for leadership, the world will be a different place. Because the best type of leadership is a mother and what a woman does, right? So I want to thank you so much for giving me this time today. I hope that the audience was paying close attention, because Arlene is not just the typical average person. And I know she's very humble. She would never say this. She is a top of the line leader. When you talk about the labor movement, the way that it should be, the way that leaders should carry themselves, she embodies every single one of those characteristics. And I thought it was important to have somebody of her caliber in this segment of leadership footprints, because leadership leaves clues. You just gotta listen and apply this nugget that she shared with all of us so that you can become a better leader. Arlene, I wanna thank you again for being here. I'm so appreciative of your time. And I know that next year is gonna be a huge year for you to still make a difference in this world with United Teachers Los Angeles. And for all of you out there, you have been blessed with this lady today, sharing all this with you. And this is Pablo Murillo from Genesis Leadership Trainings. Download our coaching app. Is live on the Apple Store now. Confidence Builder by Genesis. Remember, spell it with a Y, Y-E-N-E-S-I-S. And so you can get nuggets, leadership nuggets there every week and every month, okay? Thank you, Arlene. I'll see you at the top where the champions belong. Bye-bye, everyone.